Wednesday, August the 27th. Lake levels come down about a foot. It's right at about 9:13 since our report last week. Water temperature has been about 83, 84 degrees. It's been kind of nice out there fishing. Starting to get hot again right now, but it's been overcast. Fishing's been good. What I'm going to talk about this week, we're still in the summertime pattern, so rather than talk about a lot of the drop shot and the spoon and the things that we've been doing, I'm going to talk about probably one of my most favorite way to fish, and it actually works real good this time of year. I've been catching quite a few fish on it. And what that is, it's a Texas rig worm. You don't hear very many people talking about it very much, but you've heard me talk a lot as the summer goes on. I put a bigger trailer on my jig. It seems like the later into the summer that you get, the fish are wanting, bigger. He found my direction. The fish are wanting a bigger meal. So that's why I think that worm, works real good. And especially with the lake dropping like it is right now, we're starting to see a lot of cedar trees and a lot more timber that we haven't seen for quite a while. It's been a while since the lake's been, much lower than 9:13. So I'll start out with the rig I like to fish it on. I like a 7.2 or a 7.3. I use a luge rod. It's a Mag Bass Rod 2 or a Mag Bass Rod 1. And usually on the Texas rig worm, I like a high-speed retrieve reel. I like a 7.5 to 1, but 6.4 or 6.8 will work fine. And then on my line, I usually use 15 to 20 pound line, or 15 to 17. And I say that, and I've got 16 on, but this is Sunline. And I've got a lot of people that ask me what this chartreuse is on this line. This is a FC Sniper flipping line from Sun, and about every 2.5 feet, there's about a foot of chartreuse. So what you want to do is tie onto the chartreuse part, so from your bait up, the line is clear. But this really helps for you to stay in contact with your line. And so much of this worm fishing is you have to be able to see what your line is doing. Now I'll use multiple different weights. This one here I've got rigged up with a 1/2 ounce tungsten weight. I always use tungsten. It's a smaller profile weight and it outweighs lead, quite a bit. Now with this bigger worm here, I've got a 5/0 hook, just a regular worm hook. And I've got a round bend hook. The difference between a round bend and a Shaughnessy bend is it's got right here where the hook bends, the round bend's a lot wider gap. So I like that on the bigger worm. Now when I'm fishing brush piles and fishing deeper, I'll use that 1/2 ounce weight. If I'm fishing from 3 feet to maybe 12 or 15, I'll usually go with a 5/16 or maybe a 3/8 ounce. I've got it rigged up the same way. I don't peg, very seldom do I peg the weight when I'm Texas rigging. This one's a little bit smaller worm. This is a 9-inch worm. This is a Strike King worm. And I've got a 4-rod hook in this one. Same size line, same ratio reel. Now I will mix up my weight colors some. This is a Strike King tungsten. It's a green pumpkin. I've got a red one that matches with the plum worm and a black. Normally the black one will work fine. Now if you get into a situation where you want to peg your weight, what I usually peg it with, I get these at Sportsman Factory Outlets. They're just a rubber peg it. And what it does, you just slide it, up underneath the weight, cinch it up in there and cut it off. If you got to retie, you can slide it on up. I use bobber stoppers as well, but I find that these peggets in the weights never slide. The bobber stoppers tend to slide. And the situations where I peg versus not peg, when I'm fishing cedar trees, and unless I'm fishing real thick brush, I will peg it if I'm fishing shallow brush because I want to make sure the bait gets down with the weight. Right now what I'm fishing is a lot of fish that are suspended in treetops. So I really don't care if the weight gets hung up in a branch and the worm, falls by itself. And like I say, one of the biggest keys is to keep an eye on that line, because a lot of times all you'll see is that line moving off, and with that line not being pegged, that fish will pick that worm up and they'll hold on to it a lot better than when it's got the weight at the end of it. So it gives you a lot more chance to get the fish stuck. But the areas that I'm fishing, I'm looking for main lake, secondary points. Like I say, with the lake level dropping, we're starting to see a lot more cedar tops. And, you know, some of these fish, there'll be several fish in one tree. I think it was Monday, I forget what day it was. But anyways, we got in and got them fired up, and we caught like 4 fish consecutive. Most of the fish that you're going to catch on these are going to be largemouths. Most everything we've been catching is good quality fish. It's been hard to catch much anything over 3.5 pounds, 3.5 to 4 pounds, or at least it has been for me. Right now, that's kind of a quality fish, but anything that's keeper size is a good fish. And it's just fun fishing a worm and, you know, doing something different than what you normally do day in and day out. But I'll also fish that big worm a lot of the same places I'll fish a football jig. In the conservation brush piles, that Texas rig worm will come through that brush a lot better, and that's usually where I'll use that 1/2 ounce weight if I'm fishing much deeper than 15 or 18 feet. Another weight I'll use is just a big shaky head. And this is a 5/8 ounce. This is a homemade one, but I believe Yum makes one, Excite makes one. There's several different companies that make them, but it's got a real big hook on it. It's got a 5/0 hook, and basically you're fishing this just like a brush pile, just like you would a jig, you know, more on the bottom. When I'm fishing for the fish in the trees, I like the, 5/16 to 3/8 ounce weight a little bit better, suspended. And now I use several different types of worms. I've got, let me show you 4 or so here. This one's a Lucky Strike. It's a ringworm. It's a 9-inch. This is a Zoom Old Monster Tequila Sunrise. It'll work real well. The one I've been throwing probably the most is the Strike King Rage Worm. And I've been throwing it in the 7-inch and the 9-inch. And then here's another ringworm by Lucky Strike that's a Tequila Sunrise as well. It seems like I do big, I will use the watermelon and green pumpkin, but for the most part, if the water's stained, I'll use something with a little plum, a little red. And this is a technique that works at Stockton and Truman as well, but a lot of people don't throw it that much on Table Rock. They think the water's not dirty enough. But it'll really work good in these conservation brush piles, even down in the clear water, then brush piles 25, 30 feet deep. And like I say, the worm, the Texas rig worm, comes through that brush so much better than a jig does. And a lot of that reason is because, like this big shaky head or a football jig, the bait gets wedged. It's not so much the hook gets stuck, but it's got such a blunt nose like a football head, it gets wedged in between the limbs where the bullet weight, it just starts off at a point and it'll work through a lot of that stuff that the jig and the shaky head won't. So if you get a chance, get out and try that. It's a good way to catch some quality fish. And you can fish a lot of the same areas you've been fishing, just fishing with the worm instead of the jig. So until next week, good luck, good fishing.